Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through an energetic, structured exploration of the science and geography behind the world's most complex wines. If you've ever looked at a glass of dessert wine, a sherry, or a rich port and wondered exactly how it got that incredible, almost syrupy depth, well, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to break down the chemistry and tour the globe to uncover how these absolute masterpieces are made. So, let's dive right into it.
So what actually happens when you add pure alcohol to a fermenting wine? I know it kind of sounds like a simple, maybe even reckless chemistry experiment, right? But this single, aggressive intervention fundamentally alters a grape's destiny. It can lock in natural sugars, completely change how the yeast behaves, and give birth to an entire category of legendary, virtually indestructible drinks.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with number 1, what are fortified wines? Then we'll unpack 2, production secrets. From there, we hit the road for 3, the Spanish wine regions, cross the border into 4, Portugal's port and Madeira, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with 5, global sweet wine wonders.
All right, let's kick things off with section 1. What are fortified wines? The laboratory.
Now, you might be wondering what officially makes a wine fortified. The absolutely crucial point here is this magic number, 17.50%. According to strict European regulations, a wine officially crosses into the standard fortified category when it's strengthened with ethanol during production until its total alcohol content crosses this exact 17.50% volume threshold. So it's not just a really strong wine, you know? It's a mathematically precise, legally defined category of winemaking.
Moving right along to section 2. Classification and production secrets, the blueprint.
What's really fascinating here is looking at the specific toolkit winemakers are legally allowed to use. Up top, you've got your base products, things like raw grape must, partially fermented must, or finished wine. But down on the bottom, you see what I like to call their cheat codes. Winemakers introduce neutral alcohol from grapes hitting a staggering 96 degrees, or a wine distillate somewhere between 52 and 86 degrees. By blending these super powerful alcohols into the base products, they can dictate exactly how sweet or dry the final product is going to be. And guys, this right here is the real aha moment of our science lesson. It's the stark contrast between the two main aging paths. In biological aging, the yeasts run out of sugar, change their metabolism to aerobic, and actually form a protective layer over the wine called the flor. It is essentially a living blanket. But in oxidative aging, you add that strong alcohol early to stop the fermentation entirely. That prevents any yeast layer from forming at all, leaving the wine totally exposed to the air to develop these deep, nutty flavors. So one protects and the other oxidizes.
Okay, we've got the science down. Now for section 3, the Spanish wine regions. The terroir tour begins.
Welcome to the Marco de Jerez. This is a famous geographic triangle down in Andalusia, defined by the towns of Jerez de la Frontera, El Puerto de Santa Maria, and San Lucar de Barrameda. And let me tell you, this place is intense. It basks in roughly 300 days of sunshine a year. We're talking brutal temperature swings going anywhere from 4 to 40 degrees Celsius. Plus, it's constantly being battered by 2 prevailing winds, the westward poniente and the eastward levante. The vines here have to be unbelievably resilient.
So, how do these vines actually survive that blazing Andalusian sun? Well, they rely on a secret weapon buried right beneath their roots, albariza. This is a stark, brilliantly white soil found heavily in Upper Jerez. Because it has this massive concentration of calcium carbonate, sometimes up to 45%, it literally acts like a giant mirror. It reflects the solar radiation directly back up onto the grape clusters, ensuring they ripen flawlessly. It's wild.
But wait, what about water? With all that heat and dry summer air, how do they get enough to drink? Winemakers use this highly ingenious technique called asserpiado. They literally carve these little rectangular bathtubs into the earth between the rows of vines. This captures every single precious drop of autumn and winter rainwater, locking it deep inside that spongy albariza soil to sustain the vines through those blistering summer months.
Now, let's talk about the grapes themselves. We've got 2 absolute stars here. On the left is the dominant Palomino grape, which makes up about 95% of the region's plantings. It produces a pale, moderate sugar must that is just perfect for dry sherries. But on the right, you have the Pedro Ximénez grape. The really fascinating takeaway here is how they treat it. They use a raisioning process called soleo, laying these grapes out in the intense sun to intentionally lose water. This drastically concentrates their natural sugars, leading to intensely rich, super sweet flavors.
Once they harvest the grapes, the real magic moves into the cellar, following an incredibly specific Jerez aging process. They use these 600-liter oak bodas, or barrels. But look really closely at step 2. They intentionally only fill them to 500 liters. That's exactly 5/6 capacity. And that missing sixth is crucial. It leaves a vital pocket of air at the top of the barrel, providing the exact environment necessary for that biological yeast flor we talked about earlier to bloom and survive over a minimum of 3 years.
Now, if we venture just a bit beyond Jerez, Spain offers some other distinct sweet wine hubs with their own extreme microclimates. Up in the Córdoba region, you've got Montilla-Moriles, which gets blasted by 3 prevailing winds, including the hot northern Teruel, perfect for their Pedro Ximénez and Lyrane grapes. And over in Condado de Huelva, they contend with the unique Tramontana wind, specializing in the Zalamba grape and even crafting these absolutely fascinating fortified orange wines.
All right, time to cross the border. Section 4, Portugal's port and Madeira. Heat, ocean, and volcanoes.
Up in the northern Douro region of Portugal, they take a completely different approach to craft legendary port. Instead of pale white grapes, they use powerful, robust red grapes like Touriga Nacional or Tinta Rores. They fortify the sweet, fermenting wine with a potent brandy called aguardiente, and because they do this while the wine is still sweet, they stop fermentation dead in its tracks and skip the biological aging completely. Meanwhile, way out in the Atlantic Ocean on the island of Madeira, winemakers practically torture their wine to make it great. Seriously, they grow grapes like Cercial and Malvasia in unique volcanic soil. Then, during production, they subject the wine to a specialized, literal heating process. Combined with long periods of oxidative aging in barrels, the result is a practically indestructible sweet wine that is just famous for its deep, incredible toasted notes.
And that brings us to our final stop today, Section 5, Global Sweet Wine Wonders. Natural magic.
For a little natural magic, take Eiswein for example, or Eiswein. Picture this, in places with freezing autumns like Germany's Rhine Valley and certain parts of California, winemakers bravely leave the grapes on the vine until they freeze completely solid. When they press these frozen marble-like grapes, the water actually stays behind as ice. What drips out is a highly concentrated, brilliantly sweet nectar that ferments into an extraordinary dessert wine.
Now, over in France's famous Sauternes region and Hungary's Tokaji, they rely on something even stranger, a fungus. Yep, you heard that right, Botrytis cinerea, often lovingly referred to as noble rot, specifically attacks overripe grapes. It pierces the skin, dehydrating the grape and leaving behind a naturally sweet, incredibly complex, and honeyed wine. It's just a perfect example of nature doing the heavy lifting in the vineyard to concentrate those sugars. Finally, we've got Italy's approach. In regions like Tuscany for their famous Vin Santo and Veneto for their rich Amarone, they skip the freezing temperatures and the fungus entirely. Instead, they harvest the grapes and literally dry them out in the air on specialized racks before alcoholic fermentation even begins. It's just another brilliant, historic method to concentrate sugars naturally before the yeast ever gets a chance to go to work.
We have literally traveled from the precise chemical thresholds of the laboratory straight to the sun-baked Albariza soils of Spain, the volcanic ovens of Madeira, and the freezing vineyards of Germany. Now that you understand the laboratory science and the immense global geography behind these incredible flavors, here is the question. Which unique terroir will you look for on the menu next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating structures behind the things we love.